Hi, and welcome to another watch list, my occasional run through what I've been watching and what I've been up to in the world of film and video and cinema. This week we have the remnants of maybe some horror-ish titles from the end of October into the start of November, which be noir season, and I've only seen a couple of those, but we'll see how we get on. First up is something of the scary or the more horrific genre. I watched David Cronenberg's The Brood. Never seen The Brood, and my memory of some of Cronenberg's films is a little bit hazy. Haven't seen Existence. I have Existence up there. I don't really have a great memory of what some of that is like, but I do know he's very famous for his body horror, and I have to admit, The Brood struck me for a very long portion of it as being not very yucky in terms of body horror. But of course that flips completely on its head by the end of it. You know, volume sometimes overdoes actual singular looks of body horror or otherwise. I thought The Brood was fantastic. It has this great 70s vibe in the way that it's shot and the way, the style and the character and the dress, obviously, of that period. But it almost feels a bit like a crime thriller, or it's like a whodunit of sorts, even though there's obviously a supernatural element going on here, so it becomes basically a supernatural thriller in the end. And while some of the acting of some of the younger members of the cast is somewhat questionable and leaves it a little bit cold, I think they cast her mainly because she was very plain and very plain faced or stone faced throughout it, but a really enjoyable watch, and one that I can't wait to revisit, which is a bit odd to be saying of something that is kind of horrific in places and maybe not all that wonderful to look at or see. Next up was my first viewing of Halloween, the original John Carpenter movie. Never actually seen Halloween. I'm not really sure why. I've seen many of other classic films from that era and time, and Halloween, I watched it in like a group party with people. We went on the Discord call and watched it bit by bit, and it was interesting. Haven't seen many John Carpenter movies and seen refer to aspects within it about how much I was able to add nearly as the commentary track, but in the group watch that we're watching, about what I know about Halloween, having never seen it, which was interesting because the other two people kind of had, which made it even more interesting. Things that were a bit odd for me about Halloween. I mean, again, it's one of those things by today's standards kind of thing. It's not particularly scary and it's not particularly gruesome either. It's quite interesting though. It's an interesting look at the mind of a deranged lunatic. Basically, so much so Michael Myers being that kid that kills from a very early age and therefore a psychopath, and he gets released and it goes on a murderous spree on Halloween one night, and Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie, is taken in this place. She's looking after some kids. There's the usual tropes of the genre being about teenage sex being wrong, people are being punished for it, that kind of thing, and the William Shatner painted mask. It works quite well to dehumanize the character, like it definitely does. But I think ultimately it was just an okay film with some clever and good filmmaking techniques. That kind of rotoscopic camera, or gyroscopic camera, with the eye through the eyes of the killer, so to speak, is used a lot. The first scene where they go around the side of the house and in and out, it's one that's been copied many times in many other horror films, but it's done particularly well here, and knowing the story about how they coordinated it and did it made it all the more enjoyable. So first time watching Halloween, I mean, I'm not dying about it like some other people are, sorry, but I could watch it again. I could even watch it with my kids, even though like 12. I don't think there's anything particularly scary as long as they weren't totally freaked out in that way either. Other things that I watched, well, I watched a lot of Third Window films over the past kind of week. They were doing their sale basically on iTunes, and there were 99p rentals, so I got a whole load of them to watch. And I will do some separate videos on some of them, but one of the ones that I watched was Sion Sono's The Whispering Star. And The Whispering Star is a space drama of some sort, but I use drama very, very loosely because it's much more of a mood piece than it is of anything else. It basically tells the story of a robotic AI character who goes around the galaxy delivering packages. And the packages, well, what's in the packages is a bit of a mystery, at least at the start. And even when it's revealed what's inside the packages, it's still a bit of a mystery in there. But she delivers the packages rolling around the galaxy, and her own companion is the AI companion on the spaceship as they travel around. And it's a very minimalist set, and it's a very minimalist idea. And while the film, it did leave me cold when I watched it. I felt I could have explored some of the things a bit more deeply. I feel that it could have revealed a bit more about itself. But again, it's one of those films, after watching it and in the weeks after I've watched it, I kind of find myself thinking about a lot, which is often the hallmarks of a lot of good Asian cinema, if you want, more so than many other things. And maybe that's partly down to language and barrier and culture, in that there's other things that ruminate around there in my head as to what's happening there. So a really interesting watch, and one that I really do want to watch again. I will pick up. I know Sion Sono's a big favourite of a lot of people. And this felt more like a tone poem or a mood poem. In many ways, it's not a very long film, but it has some things to say about what we throw away and what we exchange with other people, and what's important. So, Whispering Star was one of those, certainly. Another one that I watched was Melancholic. It's one of the more recent releases from Third Window Films, and it basically tells the story of a university graduate who is a bit of a loss in his life. He standing around one day, and he eventually takes up a job in a bathhouse. Within the bathhouse, his basic job is just to take money off people, give them towels, and clean up after themselves. But he stays behind one night and notices that it's not just a bathhouse, it's a slaughterhouse, and not just a slaughterhouse for animals, it's a slaughterhouse for people. It's a great concept in that a bathhouse gets regularly cleaned, it gets washed down. You murder people there, all the blood gets washed away, and nobody would suspect anything. It's not a place that would get caught in a murder scene because, bleach, etc. is used. And the interesting thing about Melancholic is that it sets up as a very violent kind of movie. That some of the murder, etc., is quite gory. But it's not really a film about that. It's a film about interactions of people, and about people who have lost their way, and people, what they find to do to exist, or how they progress with their lives, or what people expect of them. And it's very much a story about people. And my wife actually picked it up after about half an hour, 20 minutes, and watched it with me and found it incredibly enjoyable. I thought it was going to be too violent to kind of watch, because she would nearly be repulsed by an awful lot of that gratuity of violence that's there that I kind of seen a lot more of in Asian films. But like I say, it's not overly done, and again, it's about the people and the characters and how they relate to each other, both in terms of this kind of central character who's very unsure and very gawky and awkward around all sorts of people, including his girlfriend, and then contrast that to some other people that seem much more sure of themselves, or his parents who just seem oblivious to the entire world around them and are happy to exist in their own little bubble. And again, another really interesting release from Third Window, and one that I will also pick up a physical copy of as well. Next up, let's talk about some physical releases that I have here, and I've got two crackers to finish. The first one is an Indicator release. It's spine number 178, and it is the Paul Ennett film, The Beast Must Die, which is an Amicus production. It basically tells the story of a whodunit, who is the werewolf. We have an all-star cast that basically come together to this mansion, collected together, and our job as the viewers to find out which one, or investigate which one of them is the werewolf, as people end up getting murdered, etc., as go along. And it even has this incredibly, it's a very watchable part where, the film pauses and it says, right, this is your last chance to tell me, the narrator, who you think the werewolf is. And of course, I paused it as much to give myself more time to think, and went for them, possibly them, etc. And you see whether you're right. And while it's not I don't think it's trying to tell any great point about life or otherwise. It's a very good and watchable action film. You see the motivations of the central characters. You get to see some somewhat familiar faces going ahead and doing it. You know, Peter Cushing's in it, Kevin Lockhart's in it, you know, Michael Gambon's in it. You know, there are definitely some faces that you will recognise in it, and it's just a very good fun movie, and one I really, really, really enjoyed. And again, another great disc from Indicator as well as it goes. You know, you've got your thick booklet, it's a single disc release, etc. You pull in it there the picture of as you're going along, and on the reverse of the booklet you get Peter Cushing. Always wonderful, and some great extras in there, as there always are, and ones that I need to dip back into as well. And then finally, well, you've probably seen from the artwork, because I used it for the artwork this week, what the final movie is. And again, a film that I had never seen. Pretty special movie, I think you'll agree. I watched it with a wife again as well. I knew this was one that she would like, and it is Cinema Paradiso. And what can I say about Cinema Paradiso? It's a film of heart. It's a film about something, in this case basically cinema, but cinema in the context of the relationship between a young boy and the projectionist in the local cinema, and how he becomes a pseudo father figure for him throughout his life, even to the point that, you know, the way that he pushes him to go on and do better for himself. It's just a celebration of everything that's good in the world. You know, relationships, life, experiences, both good and bad. How what we do as people affects other people, again, both positively and negatively. And again, even though time passes, what's important to us as people? What matters to us as people? What stands the test of time as being a defining characteristic of ourselves? And honestly, it is one of the most beautiful 2 hours and a bit of cinema that I have ever seen. Ever. It without doubt goes right up the top of the films that I've ever watched. It was just an absolute joy, between the music, between the visuals, between just everything. And you're just tinged with, everything's tinged with a little bit of sadness that's born out of nostalgia. You know, that kind of thing. They weren't my memories, but I can relate to them because I had similar memories, not necessarily about cinema, but about different aspects of my life, whether it be music or books or school or whatever it was. I can definitely relate to, and about the people that pass through our lives and how they affect us, and seeing them many years later, what that means to us, and how people. It's just absolutely wonderful. It's just due to be get a 4K release in the next couple of weeks by the time you see this, and well, it's just jam-packed. It's the same release as far as I can tell, with the same extras, etc. on it, but you get a lovely 4K print. I don't know whether the 4K print makes enough of a difference. Nice upscale in the Blu-ray. I mean, it's a wonderful looking film at the best of times, this release, and I'm sure some people will be selling this off. So if you haven't seen it, check it out and go and grab it. And that's my lot for the week, or for the past couple of weeks, so to speak. Like I say, I've got a couple of videos coming out about some of those other third window film titles that I utterly adored, and that I think need a bit of a closer spotlight put on them as being a bit more special than just kind of throwing them in. Thanks very much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Let me know what you've been up to, and I'll speak to you all again soon. Alright, take care. Bye.